There's something special, Devin, when you can know that you are giving.
There's going to be highs and lows. There's going to be everything in between.
But the more you do it, then you get more comfortable. The more comfortable you get, the more confidence you build.
Sky is the limit.
Uncomfortability breeds growth.
I can literally make as much impact as I want.
What helps me overcome some of those things, Devin, is bringing it back to my why.
Dedicated to his faith, family, and community, he integrates values of integrity and compassion into every aspect of his business approach.
Everything we have belongs to God. You don't give in order to get back.
There's nothing that you are uncapped on quite like entrepreneurship. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Diehard Entrepreneur Stories. Today, my guest is a seasoned real estate investor, entrepreneur, and the founder of Sparrow REI, a real estate company focused on acquiring, restoring, and reselling distressed properties in Middle Tennessee, Indiana, and Alabama. He cut his teeth in financing and consulting, developing expertise in client relations, acquisitions, and project management before branching out to create his own purpose-driven business. Dedicated to his faith, family, and community, he integrates values of integrity and compassion into every aspect of his business approach. He is one of the top 3 people I think about when it comes to understanding and developing true relationships. That is his superpower, and today you're going to hear all about it. Let's welcome my friend Lyle Spann. Lyle, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Devin. Happy to be here, man. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you coming. Now, before we jump into it, dude, let's set the stage. I need you to bring your heat right now. Just bring the heat with the dad joke. Hit me with it. I know you brought one.
Thought you would never ask, Devin. Yeah, so this is one of my favorite seasonal dad jokes, but it's applicable at any time. So, Devin, I got to ask you, how do you fix a broken pumpkin? I know you want to know.
I don't know, dude. I don't know, dude.
You fix it with a pumpkin patch. It's a dad joke.
Right over my head, dude. You know what, though? I still haven't heard the same one twice. I thought I was going to get you today. I was like, he's going to search so hard for the best one that he's going to pull one that I've heard before, but still, no. Okay, I like it. I'm going to look out for that one next year, though, because, I don't know if either I'm really forgetful or, I don't know, maybe you truly have just never told me the same joke twice.
I try to mix it up. I keep them all in my database. See what I did there? So bad. All right, we can talk about more important things than my terrible puns.
All right. Well, making people laugh for sure. I know that much. Before we really jump into talking about your superpower and everything like that, I'd love for you to share with our audience your background. I know a little bit about it. I've heard your story and various different parts. But man, one thing I really admire about you is when I think of diehard entrepreneurs, you're one of the ones that comes to mind, because I didn't ever know you as like a W-2 person. Like, I've known you for a couple years, and as I've known you, you've always not had this W-2. You've always just worked for yourself, like been a straight entrepreneur. So I'd love for you to share with our audience some of your background and how that came about.
Absolutely, man. Tell our story a little bit. And jump in there at any time too, if you feel like I missed something. But I was in the finance world and the corporate world, financial software specifically. So I landed at a consulting company after several companies I worked for, and was working for a software consulting company. So after a couple of years traveling and helping people, clients that we had all over the United States, I joined our sales team there and worked from home, had flexibility. God was really good with that job and providing for our family and all those good stuff. Well, at the beginning of a year, several years ago, a friend of mine who was flipping houses in Atlanta, Georgia, had been dating a girl that goes to my church. So he'd been coming up for a couple of years visiting, and we had a acquaintance and, a small kind of relationship just based on that. And he hit me up at the beginning of the year and said, hey, wanted to move to Middle Tennessee, wanted to get my feet wet and doing some things in that market, looking for somebody who can go look at some houses for me, kind of help me be kind of boots on the ground, if that's something I'd be interested in. So bro, I'll talk to a dead tree, Devin, or a brick wall, right? I don't mind talking to people and had flexibility. So that year I actually worked part-time just helping him with acquisitions and helping manage projects in Tennessee when he was in Georgia, and did well. And at the end of the year, he made me an offer. New Year's Eve was a New Year's Eve shindig, and he told me to check my email, and he offered me to come join him full time. And he had moved to Tennessee at the end of that year and asked me to join him full time as a sales and acquisitions guy. So prayed about it, thought about it, and took the leap, left my W-2 and joined him and his team. So worked with him for a year. We agreed to work together for a year and kind of revisit with the plan of kind of going long term. And we flipped 46 houses that year between Atlanta and Middle Tennessee. And I learned a ton, right? Tons of exposure to real estate investing.
I love that. Holy smokes, 46. That's a lot. That was your first year, like working in that type of company.
Full time. Yeah.
Did you just jump in? Were you like, tell me a little bit about your sales position, like your limit of your experience there.
He helped fill the gaps, right? And kind of how his process was on acquisitions and things. He had been pretty much a one-man show for the most part. And we were part of a mastermind as well that helped fill in some of those gaps. But I kind of was baptized by fire in a way, right? And just kind of jumped in the deep end, which I'm okay with, and he knew that. I knew that going into it, that there was going to be a lot on my plate to just figure out. So long story short, we worked together for that year. We had agreed to kind of revisit with the plan of going long term. We both did really well, but we just kind of found out, which sometimes you don't know until you work with someone, right? That we just kind of had some different communication styles and just some different styles of the way we did things. And just made the decision that it probably wasn't the best fit long term. So at that point, I had the decision to go back to my W-2, had a really good relationship with the company that I left. Or do I want to take everything that I've learned, all the potential that's in real estate, and, is this something that I would want to pursue? Even if I go to my W-2 and I just do it on the side, I had the decision to make at that point, right? Knowing that this necessarily wasn't the best long-term solution for me. What do I want to do? So, man, we prayed about it. My wife talked about it, talked to some mentors in my life, and really just felt a peace about doing our own thing. So, that's what we did. And there's some things that go into there, right? So some structure that we put in place. I know you and I had talked about this before, but my wife and I, God has been good to us and we had some stability. So we had 6 months of our monthly expenses set aside, in conjunction or in separate from our emergency fund, like savings, right? So I said, babe, I'm going to go at this full time. And I'm gonna bet on myself here and everything that I've learned and the resources we have. We joined Seven Figure Flipping, a mastermind that we're still part of. And if this doesn't work, in the first several months, then I'll go back to W-2 and we'll pivot. So, man, God blessed us. I worked hard. He opened doors, right? The relationships and the network that we had that we surrounded ourselves with was pivotal for the success that we saw quickly. And here we are, man, several years later, flipping about 30 houses a year and several rental properties and roofing company and all kinds of stuff, man. But
just crushing it. Dude, I love that. Going back to that moment where you decided, hey, I'm going to capitalize on this opportunity. One thing that I noticed, that opportunity in and of itself was presented because of a relationship. I just think that's the coolest thing. And it makes me think about like my own life. I'm like, is more than what I think because of relationships actually because of relationships. And maybe I just don't quite see it that way all the time, because as I'm just hearing you talking, I'm just like, oh, dang, he had that opportunity because of her and the church. And then like, wow, that's pretty cool. Like that's awesome, man, because you were invested in them. Had you not been, clearly that opportunity wouldn't have presented itself,
Absolutely. Relationships are so key. And we'll talk about that. I know we'll talk about that a little more, but the guy that I worked for, part-time for the year and then full-time for the year, we went our separate ways from a business perspective, but it's important to me as well that, we go to church together now. We have a good relationship. Yeah. Right. We've been talking about playing pickleball together. We hadn't got on the court yet, but we've been talking about playing pickleball together. We've done a few deals together. He's still heavily involved in real estate investing. So relationships are paramount. And that's what we believe, and that's how we build our business.
Dude, I love that so much. I know you're a man of faith. You can hear it in the way that you speak and the actions that leave you. And I'm a man of faith as well. So I really appreciate that. I know that there was some careful prayer, some thought behind this transition, this decision that you made. Can you share with our audience, why do you think ultimately you chose to leave the comfort, what people could see as the comfort of the W-2, steady paycheck, potential? If I had to guess, you're pretty good at your job. So potential to climb the corporate ladder and everything like that. Where was your head at during that time?
Yeah, there's two things that kind of factored into that, right? So one of those things was my wife and I feel like giving is a piece of a core piece of our lives. I am a man of faith, Devin, and I'm unashamed of that. But I'm not a preacher, right? I'm not the guy to go preach. Sure. I'm not the guy that's going to different countries, and which I love that people do that, and we support people that do that, but that's not me. But I feel, my wife and I feel called to give financially, end of our time. So that was a piece of it. So we had giving goals before I left my W-2. We had a giving goal that we set as a family. So instead of New Year's resolutions, I'll tell you the quick story. Instead of New Year's resolutions that we had kind of come up with for ourselves, we decided that our one goal for that year was going to be to give 50% more than we gave the year before. That was our family goal.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and that actually is the year that the guy I worked for asked me to do part-time for him. He reached out to me. So there was some side income that came from that. So, and then bonuses we didn't get that year that we were supposed to get, that ended up, the company I worked for ended up giving us at the end of the year, which was unprecedented that they retro paid bonuses, even though, anyways, there's a whole bunch that went into it, right? And at the end of that year, we gave 50% more than the previous year, but when I looked at the math, our combined income was 50% more than the previous year. So one of those things that you can't outgive God. It was I call it a God nod. I felt like it was one of those little God nods where he's like, I see you, bro. That just obviously encouraged us even more so to give. So the reason I'm telling you this story, that next year I worked for, the investor, and I made more money than I've ever made in my life. And we gave more than we've ever given. So when we felt like God opened the doors for us to start our own business, really felt like us doing this entrepreneurial journey and the potential that is in real estate investing and to build something ourselves, we really felt like God was opening the door for us to be able to give financially over the coming years, right? The rest of our lives, more than we ever would have been able to just, working for the man, if you will. Right?
Yeah.
So giving was one of those core pieces for the decision that we felt like we had that piece about doing this journey, because we believe about impacting our community, right? Impacting the kingdom of God and just impacting people. And if we can do that, at a greater capacity, then that is something that we feel like is what we're supposed to do as a family. And the other thing for me, man, was, the potential, the time freedom piece of entrepreneurship, right? As well as, just the potential. And real estate investing specifically, right? We're building passive income through rentals. I want to retire earlier than 64 or 69, whatever the age becomes, right? Want to retire quicker, want to be able to build wealth for my kids and my family rather than, just putting money in a 129 for college or whatever the case is, which I'm not opposed to, by the way, but more so than that, building wealth and just having opportunity and potential and betting on myself. I'm all about my ability for a company in a W-2, right? And I appreciate the compliment or the confidence that you had. But I did pretty well and I had well respected, and there was a path there, but felt like still there was a cap. Whereas if I'm doing my own thing with my own business and building something based on the values, the morals, and the things that I hold dear and giving it maximum effort, man, the sky's the limit in my opinion.
Oh, dude.
So that was the second big piece is the potential that's there. Yeah, and then the time freedom too. I take my girls to school, right? Pick my girl up from school, and so now sometimes I'm on the computer at midnight, right, knocking stuff out. But I have the ability to create my own schedule and the time freedom to do things that are important to me outside of work. So,
And like you pointed out, man, you're the steward of that. And so if you want to spend time with your girls all day long and you're going to put in the hours after, great. But at least you get a choice, right? You're not locked into a place from 9 to 5 or whatever, however you could view it, right? I'm just assuming. I don't know the depths of your corporate job, but man, I love that. Yeah. The two big things that I heard was stewardship first and foremost, man, which that really resonates with me. Cause that's one of my core beliefs as well. But also that sort of like the sky is the limit type of mindset. When I was 19 years old, I started a landscape company. This is like my first real taste of entrepreneurship. But I started a landscape company. At that time, I thought I didn't have a lot of self-awareness. I thought it was logic. To me, I was like, it made sense because I was working a ton. I was working these 3 different jobs, and I was like, man, I need a way to have flexibility, but make more money. Cause if I go get a part-time job at $8 an hour, I'm making, that ain't going to work. So I got to work less hours, but make more money. And so I was like, I'll just start mowing lawns. And then that grew into, oh man, this could be an actual landscaping company and I could do bigger jobs and so on and so forth. And, during that same time is when I joined the military. And I remember before I joined the military, sort of the future as I saw it was, man, I can go one of two paths. I can join the military and then who knows, I'm just going to I'm doing it to serve. So I'm just going to do basically what I'm told. I don't really know what comes after that. And then there was this other path, which was to continue as an entrepreneur. And I just remember the feeling. To me, it felt like the timing wasn't right. But dude, I very vividly remember standing in my driveway as I'm thinking about this, right? And I remember thinking, dude, I could literally make as much impact, as much money, work as much as I want. Sky is the limit. There's nothing that you are uncapped on quite like entrepreneurship. So that hearing you say that, it was kind of taking me back. I was like, dude, I remember that feeling. I remember being like, man, there's no cap. There's no cap. It's what I make of it. That is such a cool thing. I appreciate that. So Lyle, tell me a little bit about the initial plan. Was it pretty well developed as you transition from, working for this investor to starting your guys' business? It sounds like you had a lot of exposure. So maybe the plan was pretty solid. You're like, yeah, dude, we're just going to buy, X number of houses per year and flip them. Or was it kind of let's just go and figure it out in flight? Tell our audience a little bit about that, please.
Yeah, I would love to sit here and tell you I had this elaborate plan all set out. I knew exactly how it was going to go. We executed it perfectly, and here we are. That could not be farther from the truth, Devin. I was figuring it out as I went, man. Legitimately figure it out as I went. So the relationship piece and the network piece, right? Being part of a mastermind really helped, right? As I was kind of flying by the seat of my pants, having some people who had been there who could kind of give me some guidance and direction on maybe some things that I want to consider or some things to put in place or things to try or not to try, right? Things to avoid. So that was definitely very, very helpful and pivotal for kind of being successful, I think, quicker than trying to figure it all out on my own. But no, man, I didn't have a plan. I knew what I knew from the sales and acquisition side of things.
Right.
I didn't really know the back end of a lot of things, right? Because I wasn't involved in that working for the other investors. So I was figuring some stuff out for sure, but I knew the basics. The basics things that I knew how to find distressed properties. I knew how to negotiate and buy at the right price. I knew how to run numbers. And then I knew that I had access to hard money lenders, and I went on the private money train to raising people in my life who wanted to see their money grow, to raising private money. So I knew how to find money, at least, how to go and look for it in the conversations I have. I knew how to find properties. And then I had developed some relationships with some contractors and things as well. So I knew the basic functionality of how to flip a house. I just had all the rest to figure out, and then had to figure out when I'm doing multiple at a time and how we grew quicker and like how to structure private money, like so many things that I kind of had to figure out as I went, and I failed and picked myself up, and I learned and all those things, but there was no game plan, man. I've developed one and talked to some people, right, and had some people in my life who were able to help me figure a game plan out. But basically, I just took action. Like, I love that. I need to make money. I'll figure the stuff out, the structure out, like all of that stuff. But I need to be bringing in income for my family. And to do that, I know I got to go take action. Like, I got to actually put boots to the ground and go do stuff.
Get it done. Put in the work. Yeah. I love that. And like you had mentioned too, the business plan is one thing, but you also had this actual financial plan in place where you were like, all right, we're going to do this. You had already set the stage by hitting a few financial goals, and you set a timeline. You said, here's a runway, certain amount of money that will sustain you guys that you're going to set aside. And you set a timeline. If we're not at X point by this time, then we go to the alternate plan, right? That's the primary plan. Then we'll go to the alternate plan. The alternate plan could look like me going back to my job or this job or that. So you had kept that stuff in mind, which, if I had to guess, probably helped you sort of internally deal with the turmoil of the ups and downs and the failure when you initially started. Because if you're anything like me, there is still a lot of that, even though from the outside, you see a lot of the successes. Am I right?
Yeah, 100%. It definitely helped, right? Having what I felt like was security for a plan, right? At least security for my family. There's nothing more important to me, right, than my faith and my family. So I wasn't going to sacrifice that. So having a plan on that, financial plan, and then also having the pressure of, hey, if 6 months, if this thing doesn't work, and I've exhausted this little reservoir we had of funds for 6 months, then I got to go back to the W-2. I got to work for somebody. I got to ask off for PTO. Like, this is going to change drastically if I don't go do it. So that pressure also, I feel like, catapulted me into like, roll up my sleeves.
You got to get it done.
That's right.
Got to figure it out.
That's right.
I love that, dude. I love that. I want to take like a half a step back here, because you had mentioned this and I don't want to pass over it. You said, this relationship that really was like the genesis of real estate for you. It didn't end badly. You didn't just like kill that off, right? And relationships in business come and go. Anybody that's done it for a little bit has had good relationships and bad relationships. It does not matter who you are, right? You're going to do some things wrong. People are going to do some things wrong. You can't control it. So, man, do you have any tips for our audience or any thoughts looking back in hindsight on, how you navigated that? I know it was probably a really challenging, difficult conversation you had. And you don't have to share, details of the conversation, but just sort of for our audience, man, how you think about relationships and when you know that, hey, this probably isn't going to be a good one, like how you stay on good terms with people. Because here's the thing, Lyle, you are one of the most authentic people I know. And it's not like you don't do things just to save face. Like you like genuinely care, and you're like, it's almost like, I'm sure you've had bad relationships. I don't doubt it. But like when you see things not quite working out, it almost seems like you can head that off before it gets to that point. I don't know. But if you could share some of that for us, man, I'd love to hear.
Absolutely, man. So relationships and communication, they're so important, right? Whether we're talking about life, whether we're talking about marriage, whether we're talking about kids or friendships, like communication and relationships they're so important. So people are always the ultimate priority, right? When I'm talking about business or when I'm talking about whatever it is, right? People should be the focus. And the lens that I look through, Devin, and I'll back up here in just a second, but the lens that I look through when I'm talking to people, and I'll tell you about this conversation that I had with this investor and kind of how all that played out. I'll give you a little more depth there. But is the way I look at people in general is like the lens I look through is like, am I treating them like Jesus would treat them? Like, am I treating people the way that I want to be treated? And am I treating them, and am I building a relationship in the way that someday, if there's an open door for them, if they have a need and that I can help pray with them, that they would feel comfortable asking me to help pray for them? Or if there's something going on in their life that I can be there for them. If there's an open door for me to share the love of Jesus with them, I want every relationship that I have to have that ability. So I don't want to have poor rapport with people. I don't want to have a relationship leave poorly to where they think ill of me or anything of that would hurt my ability to be a light to them at some point. So that's the lens that I look through, and I try to keep that in mind. I'm not perfect, and I haven't been perfect, right? That's for sure. But that helps me with tough conversations, right? With conflict resolution, when I'm trying to think through that lens of, hey, how would I want to be treated, and what would Jesus do? Like, I know it's so corny, and I keep on the old school WWG on my bracelet, but it's so cliche. But sometimes I think if Jesus was standing beside me right now, would I talk to this person the way that I naturally want to react to them? Like, what I want to say to them right now, would I say that? Like, if he was, and a lot of times if I just ask that simple question, I'm like, all right, I need to rethink this.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But the conversations, like, I'm probably a weirdo. I love conflict, Devin. Like, I thrive on confrontation because it is like an ultimate challenge for me to tactfully resolve conflict and to have conflict resolution. Like, I love being able to take a situation and just have a calm conversation, think through everything, and be able to have an understanding, right? Like, I enjoy that. So probably one of the weird people who don't mind having tough conversations, but it's important having a tough conversation to have a plan, right? And have the right attitude, have the right mindset going into that. So specifically, when this investor and I had talked at the end of the year about continuing on, we had a great year. We just had the conversation before the end of the year. This is probably, I think it was in early November when we kind of had this conversation, and I just let him know kind of where I was sitting on it probably not being I wasn't a good fit for him long term. And we worked that out, right? But stayed on to the end of the year to make sure that there was a transition. I buttoned up anything. I still got him 6 more deals after I'd already told him that I wasn't. Before the end of the year, was still committed, right? And that's important to me, that I was still honoring my word to work for him for the full year, even though that I knew past that it probably wasn't the best fit. But, honoring my word and being someone that is trustworthy was important to me, and that helped save a lot of things about that relationship. That I wasn't just leaving him high and dry, telling him I'm out, right? I was very thankful and grateful for the year, and a lot of things about it just wasn't the best fit. So having the right conversation and doing the right thing, as cliche as that is as well, crucial in relationships. And the 2 things that I preach, Devin, are communication and setting expectations. So in relationships, if I give the really elementary example of my 8-year-old daughter, right? If we're going somewhere and we're going to take her on a play date, right? We're going to the park. She's stoked. She's out of her mind stoked. I am too, right? I'm a big kid. I'm running her out there playing tag. I'm doing all the stuff. Yeah. But I tell her on the way, hey, baby, like, just so you know, we got an hour and a half here, and then we have to go do this other thing. So I want you to know we're going to go play. We're going to have a blast. We're going to make the best of this. But we have an hour and a half, and then we're going to have to leave. So I want you to know that.
And you say that up front, like before she starts playing.
Like, I'm setting the expectation. So I'm communicating this to her, but then I'm letting her know, hey, this is the expectation. We're not going to be here all day. Like, there is going to be a time limit on this. Let's make the most of it. And I make it fun. It's not like, hey, we're here an hour and a half and we're leaving. It's like, hey, we got an hour and a half. Let's make the most of this, right? Yeah. And then I also, about 15 minutes from time to go, I'm like, hey, B, just so you know, we got 15 minutes, all right? Like, have a blast. We got 15 more minutes, and then we're going to have to head out. And then I'll give her another 5 or 2 minute warning. So when it's time to go, she had already known the expectation was we only had a certain amount of time here. And then she has known, oh, man, I've only got a few more minutes. I really wanted to play this. Let's go do that. So then when it's time to leave, it's much less of a fight. No, I want to stay. I don't want to go.
Yeah.
We don't get that near as much because we've been setting this expectation and communicating the entire time.
Yeah.
So I know that's an elementary example, but every relationship can be like that, right? If you work with a team or if you work with people and you can set that expectation.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Contractors, right?
Yep. I was thinking about like just going through a list as you're talking. I'm just thinking like, I mean, you keep saying it's elementary, but here's the thing, man. And I know that you do a little bit of coaching. You mentor people, right? I don't mean coaching as a business model. You mentor people, like we lead people, like we're put in positions where we're helping others grow. And sometimes, most times, the things that we want to do, like the information's out there, like, and you probably already know the information. It's just, you got to figure out how to influence that person to action, to do it. And so like hearing you talk, I'm like, what you're saying makes sense. And it's not like I've never heard this before, but I can totally see as I'm talking with you, as I observe you, cause we're friends, I get to watch you. I totally see how that works, man. Like, I mean, even when you're just talking about with this investor, based on what you told me, you did those two things, right? Like you didn't leave him high and dry. You set the expectation. You guys had that sit down where you were talking about the way forward. It was expected. And then you said, oh, well, here's what you can expect from me. Like I'm going to do this thing. And then you just did that thing and you probably communicated it to him effectively in that situation. And, yeah, man, that's good. I love that. And I'm sure you take that into your relationship with your wife as well.
Yeah, I do. And we're over communicators, right? I would rather over communicate than under communicate, but it's so crucial, man, in that. And, one thing I didn't mention is, resetting expectations, Devin. Things don't always go to plan, right? So you can set an expectation and then you can communicate, but if things change, having the right communication to reset the expectations. In the example I gave you, if I get a phone call that says, 45 minutes into this play date, right? Or at the park, if I get a phone call that's like a hair on fire or something, I got to go and say, hey, I know we thought we had an hour and a half. Something really important came up. We got 5 more minutes and then we're going to have to leave. Okay. I know that we were going to be here longer, but this is something really important. I want you to know that. And we only have 5 minutes left. So make the most of your time. I'm sorry that we're cutting it short, but something really important happened, right? But I'm resetting that expectation instead of just saying, hey, we got to go. Right. Yeah. So resetting that expectation. And we do this with contractors all the time, right?
Yeah.
We have to reset expectations if a project's delaying or whatever the case is. But if you have the right communication, right, to reset those expectations and to set expectations, things go a lot smoothly. Not that they'll always be hunky-dory, right? Rainbows and sunshine. But it can help tremendously, especially with tough conversations and tough situations. It really helps things be a little smoother.
Yeah, for sure. And as you're saying that, I'm just thinking too, on that topic of resetting expectations, if you were not to do that, I mean, it's likely that your child is going to be really confused and eventually you're just not a man of your word, right? Like it just seems like, well, yeah, dad sets expectations and says this, but that's not how it always plays out. So, it doesn't really matter, but rather for you, it's like on those occasions that does happen. If it ever happens, you stop very intentionally, say, hey, here's what's happening. We're adjusting. I know I said this, but now this is what's going to happen, and giving some lead time, and then boom, it happens. So, man, thank you for sharing that. That's really impactful, Lyle. I appreciate that so much. For
sure, man. Relationships are so important. And I feel like communication in this day and age is lacking in a lot of ways. Just with husbands and wives and, bosses. And like, I feel like there is, especially with the day and age we are, where phones and text and email is so prominent as opposed to a face-to-face conversation or a phone conversation. I feel like we have a lot of things that we probably could avoid, or that we could thrive in better if we just communicate just a little better. Like, just put a little more emphasis on it. I think everyone's happier.
Yeah, man. No, I totally agree with that. And as you're saying that, I'm not so much realizing, but you're kind of showing me, dude, you're like very self-aware. Did you always grow up like valuing relationships, valuing people, or was there like a specific point you remember where you're like, man, this is really important. I'm also really good at this, and I kind of know what it takes to be good at it, and I want to sort of embrace that and kind of like, I'm okay being that type of person, because I think, I'm not the only person that refers to you as like the relationship guy, like the guy that gets things done with a relationship, takes care of people. Like, I'm not the only one that thinks of you that way. And so like, for you to be thought of that way, you first have to be okay being thought of that way and embrace it. So what has that looked like for you? Did you have any sort of realization, or how did you become so self-aware, I guess is my actual pointed question.
I appreciate the kind words, man. I don't know that I deserve some of those, but yeah, growing up, I've always loved people. I've been a people person, like outgoing, right? Love talking to people, love being social, like love being at games or like at parties, whatever, like, hanging out. Like, I've always loved that. So relationships have always been important to me, because I like to be invited to things. I like to be doing things, I like to have people over. So I've always wanted to cultivate good relationships to where people enjoyed being around me, so that I could either have an impact on them, or I could just be part of the fun, right? If someone's inviting people to go play pickup basketball, I want to be there, right? Or I want to be the one inviting people, whatever the case is. So people have always been important to me, and having good relationships. And that started from when I was really young. I kind of figured out, hey man, if I'm liked, like if I'm relatable or if I'm likable, then people want to be around me, and I'm able to do more things, right? So from a young kid, I started just like trying to be someone that people liked, not in a bad way. Now, there were bad things to it, right? If you put too much emphasis on that, then that can create some bad habits or things, if that's all you care about. But man, I was raised also in a Christian home, and Jesus was a big part of my life from when I was a kid. So I also always wanted to have good relationships with people, so that hopefully I was an example to them, not preaching at them, but at least an example. So that was always important to me too. And I will tell you, man, I love my dad. I have a really good relationship with my dad. I have an incredible dad, but he was very much so the type of communicator that like, well, don't do this just because that's because I said so. He would tell me that sometimes. Oh, sure. Right.
Okay.
Bro, that ate me up. Devin, that ate me up. I was the kid, I was the rebellious kid that I just wanted to know why. Right? Yeah. Like, you tell me I can't do it. Watch, hold my drink. Watch.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah, which also don't necessarily condone, especially being a dad now. But I enjoyed when someone would explain something to me, even if I didn't agree with it. If I understood where someone was coming from, I could respect it, right? But if I didn't even have an understanding of it, then I'm just like always wondering, well, why can't I go to my buddy's house? Like, why are you telling me I can't go hang out with him? He may know that his parents aren't a good example, and there's some things in that house that probably not healthy for me to be a part of. So he's just telling me, no, you can't go over to their house because I said so. If I had an understanding of that, it probably would have made a little more sense to me.
Sure.
So that eating at me growing up, I always told myself, like, and I haven't to this point, I'll never tell my kids because I told you so. Like, I'll explain it to them. But that also derived in me when I had conversations with people, like, explain it, help them understand what's going on, communicate, set the expectations. Like, help them understand. If people have an understanding, even if they don't agree with it, usually there can be a mutual understanding and a mutual respect to where the relationship isn't damaged, even if there's a disagreement. But all of that comes through communication and helping people understand the reality of the situation. There's so much that we make assumptions. I call them, someone called them, mental monsters, a guy that I heard speak recently. Like, when we make assumptions and when we let our brains start developing these scenarios or these hypothetics, or well, I wonder if they thought this, I wonder if they thought that. Oh, they did this out of malice. They did this out of that, without knowing facts and without knowing the reality of the situation, having that understanding, then man, we can explode, or we can really have resentment. Yeah. Like, there's so much that can come from that. So just having conversations and having understanding, from an early age, I craved that for myself. Yeah. Because things need to make sense for me. I'm a logical person. So having that helped me to want to explain things to other people, and started forming this pattern for me to just communicate with people. And it doesn't have to be a long, drawn out thing, but just, hey, here's the reality of the situation.
So it's practiced.
It's practiced, yeah. And that cultivated good relationships. People respected me for that. And
it's like a feedback loop, and then you get it. Like, man, you dumbed it down So I was thinking of this when you said something earlier about communicating and you're talking about how you're communicating with your daughter. We have a mutual friend and I was talking with them. We're talking about communicating in presentations and he's like, bro, you're way too technical. You're talking over people's heads all the time. He's like, you got to be like Lyle. Like, you got to talk to him like Lyle. I started laughing.
Tell jokes. That's all he meant.
Yeah,
just tell
dude.
jokes.
But you do a really good job. You broke it down like it at the most basic level. You're like, well, I realize that if people like me, good things happen. I want people to like me. I'm going to do things that facilitate that, right? And again, there were some constraints. You were, like you said, you weren't like going overboard being a class clown or anything like that. But just in the most basic sense, you're like, relationships are valuable, and having people like you and liking people is a good thing to happen. So what facilitates that, and then it becomes practiced over time, and now that's just a huge part of who you are. So I love that so much. Man, going back to your journey as a real estate investor, you had mentioned you and your wife sat down, you had that goal to give the year prior, right? Hey, we're going to give 50% more than we did the year prior. Yep. When you started this real estate company, what were, if any, some of your big goals? Did you have any like, big milestones on the horizon or big goals that you were like, hey, this is something that we want to hit? I'd love for you to share with us some of those.
I'll just give you the real numbers. So my wife and I, year one, right, we decided that we wanted to give $35,000 from our business. That was our goal for year one. I didn't know how much money we were going to make. I wasn't sure if this thing would take off or not, right? But we just prayed about it, and we felt like, why not? In addition to our tithes and the other offerings that we get, right? We support missions and we give, tithes to our church, things of that. This was in addition to that. This is from our business, separate to that. So in my mind, I was trying to reach a gross revenue goal of $350,000 in year one. That was like
and then give 10%. Okay, I got you.
And then I was trying to give 10%.
Love
just
it.
as giving away, right? Not as a tithe, but just as an additional giving thing. That was where my mindset was. So that was year one, and man, things took off. We ended up, I think we did 9 flips the first year, and we beat our revenue goal, and we gave a little more than $35,000. But man, like being able to do that, like there's something special, Devin, when you can know that you are giving and like you are impacting like literal human lives, right?
Yeah.
Not even all of it from a spiritual sense, right? We gave to organizations and individuals that weren't part of our church or weren't a tax write-off, right? Just trying to help people, be in the hands and feet of Jesus.
How do you decide where to give? Was that something that you and your wife kind of had a meeting of the minds and you prayed about as well, or?
Yeah, it's a great question. And we just looked for real opportunities. So,
I love that.
Because we are people, right? Mm-hmm. We just pray, God, hey, if there's someone we can help, there's an open door and there's an opportunity, like let us know. And then we'd pray about it and say, hey, is there a piece about helping these people out? A real example is some friends of ours. The guy had, they just got married, a young couple, just got married, and just his job wasn't working out right where he was. So we had him over for dinner tonight just to play games and hang out, and just had good conversation, and just felt like we should help him out. So we gave him a check for 2 months of mortgage so that he could figure something out, and the next couple of months just to take a little bit of that pressure off. And I don't say that for a pat on the back, Devin. I hope people understand that. No, of course not. It's just a real life example of not just giving for a tax write-off or giving to an organization. Yeah, like we really felt like just helping people, right? Yep. No strings attached. There's not putting that out there. We're not public. Look what we did. Like there's nothing in that. It's just literally just giving to people. And that's what we feel like we're supposed to do. So those looking for those type of opportunities, to answer your question, just as they came, and we gave to organizations too. FCA, we're a big supporter of FCA. I'm a big sports guy, right? And local FCA here, we sponsor some kids to go to summer camp, and
I saw that
some different things. So we do give to organizations, and we give to our church too, and other churches. But just looking for opportunities in everyday life.
I love it. What I hear from you is like, we set the goal, and you guys got very specific too. That first one, at least 35,000. Boom. Here's the goal. And then let the opportunity follow. And then as you're seeing the opportunities, it sounds like you're just like, okay, we'll give here. We can give here.
Right.
Man, I love that. That's amazing.
Yeah. And that's us. I'm not saying that's everyone should operate that way or needs to operate that way.
Sure.
We felt a unique, calling, if you will, to give to people. So that's kind of the structure we put in place. But I will tell you, man, the biblical principle of give and it will be given unto you, right? You don't give in order to get back, but we have seen God bless us as we have tried to be good stewards. You mentioned stewardship. Big fan of stewardship, by the way, Devin.
Yeah.
Don't want to chase that rabbit too much, but I read a book recently. I'm trying to think of the author's name. And I think it's faith-based entrepreneurship. I think is faith-based entrepreneur. I think is what it's called. And the guy talked about stewardship, and he talked about everything we have, right, is a blessing, right? Everything we have belongs to God. We can't take anything with us. So if you make decisions in life on the money you spend, right, the things that you do, do you consider yourself an owner of what you have, or do you consider yourself a steward of what you have? Which one are you? Are you stewarding? If you had a checkbook, if all the money you have was God's money, and He's like, look, I want you to spend this money how I want you to spend it.
Yeah.
Are you a steward of what God has blessed you with, or do you consider yourself an owner of what you have?
And they're two different answers, man, two different decisions. And then also you can go, hey, I'm going to do good things with this, and hey, I'm going to be irresponsible on both of those. I love that. Just hearing you say that, I'm like, dude, I totally see where this is going. This is something that I've looked at and I've really explored and embraced is I started to, man, I went through this thing the last few years, just trying to become more self-aware and like figuring out what I'm about, what are my true core values. Like I've always been on that sort of journey, man. And faith is a huge part of that. But as I've gone deeper, I've got more answers. And yeah, man, I can tell that I will probably like this book.
Yeah, I think you would for sure. And stewardship is beyond finances. Like there's a word I like called relationship capital. I love relationship capital. Like an example, right? I was on a mentoring call with someone that's part of a group that we're both part of, Devin. And they brought up a subject that I'm just not, it's not my wheelhouse. And I could have just been like, yeah, man, you need to, I'm just not the guy for you, hope you find that answer. Yeah. Well, this is a small example, but I'm like, you need to hop on the phone with Devin. You need to hop on with Devin Ramos because he is the person I think that could really help you in this situation. And this is a very small, minute example of like being a good steward of the relationships that you have, right? You don't have to have all the answers or know all the things, but we have a network, and being a good steward of our relationship capital can be huge in life, right? We don't have to know all the answers, have all the things, but we can certainly take advantage and help other people sometimes with the relationships that we have, or be one of those people that people can recommend to other people and be willing to be a helpful person, right? A servant. Servanthood is also a big thing I'm an advocate of. So
I love that. Me too. And I love on that topic though. We got him some help. Actually, I think that call happened a couple of weeks ago. I remember him saying, Lyle said, I got on call with Lyle. He said, I should talk to you or whatever. So it worked out for everybody, which is really, really cool. And I was more than happy. I mean, just like you, man, I love doing calls like that with people. So I was really, really happy to see that as well. Lyle, we've talked a lot about how you've leveraged your skill, your specialty here. I'd love for you to share a little bit about some of the beliefs you feel like you had to crush to, continue to grow this real estate company, whether it was in the way that you managed your money, or maybe it was beliefs you had about, can I do this? Can I not do this? Everybody's different. But I know because we've been able to have some conversations, sometimes the grass seems greener, and I don't want to paint a picture like that because you've busted your butt, but it also hasn't been easy. You've definitely had some downs. I've had some downs. as well. And so I'd love for you to share a little bit about sort of the internal conflict and any beliefs that you really remember crushing along the way.
Absolutely, man. And I still battle them sometimes, right? I don't think some of those ever completely go away, especially with different seasons of life and different seasons of a business. But yeah, initially there was I talk about betting on myself and feeling the peace about it. All that stuff is true, but absolutely there are limiting beliefs. Like, well, what if this doesn't work? What if I don't succeed in this? Right? What if I fail? What if I don't get the right information? All that stuff is very valid. And taking action can help you overcome some of those, like getting reps in, right? Like, you hear people talk about Kobe Bryant. I'm a big Kobe Bryant fan, by the way. How many shots he would take. He'd be the first one in the gym, the last one to leave. Yeah, he might have had a limiting belief, man, I don't need to shoot the shot at the buzzer. I might miss it. Like, what if people criticize me? But he's in the gym working on that. He's getting reps in to where he felt more confident in game time to actually take the shot. And then having the confidence to say, I missed the shot. They trusted me and I missed it, but I'm going to make the next one. Like, I'll make it up to you.
That's
right?
good.
I'm going to make the next one. So confidence is huge. I don't consider myself an arrogant person, but I do consider myself a confident person. And part of that is, faith helps me be confident because I'm comfortable with who I am as a person, as a husband, as a dad, as a Christian, as a believer. So that helps some of those limiting beliefs, being confident in who I am and that I'm doing something that I'm supposed to be doing. But, building a business and overcoming some of these. So when you think, can I get the first deal? The first deal is the hardest one, by the way. For most people, I would say the first deal is usually always the hardest one. And then once you get that first deal, I've seen so many times where, the ball will get rolling, right?
Because you have evidence.
You have evidence.
A lot of times for a lot of people, because I've heard that too, and yeah, it's cliche, but it is true, because a lot of times you hold yourself back. Like, why don't you get the first deal? You don't get the first deal because you don't make the offer. Well, why don't you make the offer? Well, because you don't want to look stupid, or you don't know where you're going to get the money, or all these fake things that you tell yourself, right? And so once you actually have some evidence, oh, I can do this. Oh, I can find the money. Oh, people are going to laugh at me, but that's okay. Or no, people aren't going to laugh at me, whatever it may be. It just, you grows like wildfire. And then you just, a lot of people start to catch momentum from there. So I totally agree with that.
Agreed, man. You hit the nail on the head, right? Getting the reps in. And then also, I tell people, uncomfortability breeds growth. So that's we grow when we can be uncomfortable, because the more we're uncomfortable, then the next time we do it, we're less uncomfortable. Like, we grow, right, as we put ourselves in uncomfortable situations. And it's uncomfortable probably at first for people, it was for me, to make offers, right, to take action, to go do all these things. It doesn't feel natural because you're not used to it. But the more you do it, then you get more comfortable. The more comfortable you get, the more confidence you build, right? The more deals you get, the more things, then that helps you overcome some of those limiting beliefs that you talked about by taking action and just getting uncomfortable. Right? I've had a lot of uncomfortable conversations, which is why one of the reasons I love them. I love confrontation, as I mentioned, but I've done it over and over again, and I feel more comfortable
lean
doing
into
those.
it. Yeah,
that's right. In flipping houses, right? I've run numbers so many times now. I was very unsure. Like, God, I need to have somebody check my numbers at first. Like, I need to make sure I'm not missing something, right? But keep running numbers. You keep doing that, and then you understand this is what closing costs typically are, because I've done this many times now. This is what floors cost. This is what paint costs. Like, you have to take action though to overcome some of those limiting beliefs, and then it becomes more normal. And now, Devin, I would be lying to you if I said that there weren't times, even this year, where I'm like, should I just go back and get a W-2? Should I just forget this whole thing, right, and go back and get a W-2? Just because growing a business, having a business, there's stress that comes with it. There's weight of, being a business owner, having employees, all those types of things. So those things are very real things to consider. But what helps me overcome some of those things, Devin, is bringing it back to my why, bringing it back to my purpose and my why, right? Like, why did I start this business in the first place? And as we've talked about already at length, I want to be able to give for a long time. And I want to build wealth for my family. I want time freedom. Like, in those moments, I remind myself why I'm doing this. And that also really helps me get past some of those
Sure.
mental seasons where I'm like, what is going on right now? And there's highs and lows.
Oh yeah.
So
Always highs and lows for sure. I was just going to say, your mind, like you were pointing out, goes back to that. Well, why don't I get a W-2? Well, because I can't do all this stuff. And this is the reason that we're doing it. So you're kind of settle down. I just say that because I do the same thing sometimes. I'm just like, I think a huge milestone for me was, it actually happened recently. I guess the best way to put it is I almost set the expectation for myself. Like I finally, man, I don't know what it was. I was working on this for a while, but I finally was like, I'm not going to have these conversations about any other methods or any other, anything anymore. Like, it's just, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing. This is the path that God has placed before me. And as far as I can see, this is where I'm going until I'm told otherwise. And so there's going to be highs and lows. There's going to be everything in between. And I'm just going to ride it out. I'm going to enjoy the journey, and I'm going to learn to expect it. And that's really helped even me out a little bit. Man, we have some really exciting things happening right now. And I feel some true joy about those things because, man, I feel like I'm being a good steward. Right. So I'm enjoying that, but I'm not like getting too, outwardly like happy or like a false sense of hope or anything. I'm like, oh, maybe it happens, maybe it don't. And then there's other things that I'm like, yeah, I really got to work through this thing. We got, these other problems over here. I don't necessarily have solutions, and I'm going to wake up tomorrow and they're still not going to be solved. And it's just kind of part of it. And, I almost just, that's kind of the expectation now is like, dude, this is the journey. And it's made me love it even more, honestly.
Yeah. There's value, man, in the journey for sure. Tremendous value. We learn a lot.
Yeah, dude. I would love for you to share a little bit about like some of the growth you've experienced. Share a little bit about your business and you as an entrepreneur since you've started. I know you had mentioned you're doing X number of deals now. I know you're in a few different markets, and I know that even as you expanded into these markets, relationships really were key in doing that. For our audience, can you share a little bit of that big picture?
Absolutely. So we're in 4 states now. We have our first one in Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky. So Middle Tennessee is where we're based, right outside of Nashville, in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. So our primary volume that we do is here in the Middle Tennessee area, all over Middle Tennessee, but in the Middle Tennessee area. And I manage all of that, right? I have my team here to manage all of that. We have a partnership in Mobile, Alabama. So we do some flips down there. And I have a buddy of mine who lived here. We played competitive softball together, travel softball. And we were on a golf trip, and he had moved down there, and he had started a roofing and construction company and was just blowing it up.
Yeah.
So one thing led to another, and we talked about partnering down there and doing some flips. So I partnered with him on flips down there in Mobile, Alabama. So a buddy of mine I've known for a long time. And then in Indiana, we launched in Indiana. Buddy I grew up with here. Also, he married a girl from Indiana, and he moved to Bloomington. And they were investors of ours when we were kind of getting started. They were invested in a couple of our deals. And he was going through a job transition, and one thing led to another. And we decided to launch a Sparrow operation in Indiana. And they've been doing really well in Indiana. So I've got Tyler and Brittany are up there flipping several houses here in Indiana, and they're running things up there. And in Louisville, so one of quick backstory, a guy that I know here in Middle Tennessee, actually he does our marketing. His name is Billy. He's one of my guys. Guy he goes to church with said, "Hey, I got my real estate license." He plays music. Got my real estate license, and I want to kind of build something when music's over that I can have to do. So we had lunch just to say, hey, this is what we do. This is how we look for properties. This is how we could work together. And he's like, oh, you guys are in Indiana too? He's like, I got a buddy of mine who's a contractor in Indiana. I should hook you guys up just in case he could ever help you out. So he hooked us up with Travis, who is an Indiana general contractor. His dad was a builder for years. So Travis now has done several of our renovations in Indiana.
Oh, wow.
But Travis has a crew and connections in Louisville, Kentucky. So he said, "Hey, Lyle, I might could find us a deal. Would you want to partner or do anything in Louisville if we find a good deal?" So I said, "Yeah, I would absolutely do that. If your crew can knock it out, I'll fund it, right? I'll run all the numbers, make sure we negotiate." Got our first deal there. And I'll tell you, we went on market with it last Thursday, Devin. We went on market with this property. It finished up. And on Sunday, we went under contract to sell it.
Oh, I'm sure it's beautiful. You guys do such good flips, dude. Oh, man.
It's all relationships. Every market I'm in is relationships.
All relationships. Well, Lyle, with that, man, let's say you're somebody listening to this and you're in this position where, hey, I see the value of relationships, and it's not just a give to get sort of thing. Like, oh, I want to be better at relationships because then I'm going to be a better businessman or make more money. It's like, no, it's full circle. It's going to enrich everybody's life better. And you just see the value in being, having quality relationships. Where do you start? Where do you go from here, or any other piece of advice you'd have for somebody in that position right now?
Yeah, I would say on the very front end, the two things to keep in mind is just to be genuine when you're connecting with someone and when building a relationship with someone. Be yourself, be genuine. Like people usually can see through inauthentic people. So being authentic, being genuine, that's huge, right? Just so that they know who you are, right? And they feel like they can relate to you for you, who you are. And the second thing is, you mentioned the word value, Devin. Mm-hmm. I constantly look when I'm having relationships with people, how can I bring value to them? So if you keep that in mind.
So not how are they going to bring value to me? How can I bring value to them? I love that, dude.
Completely the opposite of it's not how I bring value to me. It's how can I bring value to this person? And if you think that through and you learn how you can bring value to people, I can almost promise you that will cultivate a good relationship because you're bringing value to them, right? They're going to want to bring value to you. Most people will. There are people who will take advantage of you for sure. But most people, you bring value to them, right? Then they see the value in you and they want to reciprocate that, or they want to be around you because, they feel good about what you do to their life. You bring value to them. So it helps cultivate those relationships. And as you do that, you will just be shocked at the places you go and the things that you can do as you just try to find ways to bring value to people. Just add value to people and watch the relationships blossom, man.
That's so good. Oh, man, thank you for that. Well, dude, on that note, Lyle, tell us, what's going on with Sparrow nowadays? How can people get more involved with you, learn more about you and everything that the Sparrow team is doing?
Absolutely, man. We do have social media. We have a social media presence. So if you want to see a little bit more about us, www.sparrowrei.com is our website. We do have a portfolio on the way, but we have some really cool before and afters on the way. People usually love to see that, right?
I love to see that. I love your guys'. Right. I love your guys' stuff. Yeah.
So we have a website on there. You can contact us there. You can see some of the information about us there. We also have Instagram and Facebook. So Instagram is Sparrow_REI, and then Facebook is Sparrow Real Estate Investing. You can keep track of us there. You can reach us there. All of our contact information is there. And ways you can pray for us. For one, we always covet people's prayers, but two, we do have opportunities for private investors. So we have those conversations all the time. If you're looking to see some money grow, we're happy to have those conversations. And also, in any connections or any properties that you would like a cash offer on in the markets that we're in, we're happy to have those conversations as well, relationships. So, or if there's anything I can do to help you, if anyone's listening and they feel like there's any value that I can add to you, please don't hesitate to reach out. Love meeting people, love having those conversations as well. So,
love it.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Well, there you have it. Well, Lyle, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, man. I appreciate you joining us today and sharing all that, bringing that value to us. Man, I hope y'all enjoyed as much as I did. Until next time, we'll see you later.
Sounds good, Devin. Appreciate you, man. Have a good week.